Hi, my name is Steven and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be talking to you about setbacks will happen, how to deal with frustration in the moment. So in life, we're always going to be dealing with setbacks and problems. We never truly escape from it. It's a part of life, like breathing air, and some people can handle it better than other people can. Those that are able to keep their perspective and wits about them are better than those who fly off the handle and go into a fit of rage, and let their emotions dictate what they do during a setback afterwards. Throughout my life and recently, I've had to remind myself of what a setback looks like and how to handle myself during and afterwards. Because we can deal with frustration and setbacks in a positive manner, or at least minimize the time and energy spent on obsessing over it. So here are my tips and suggestions for what to do when something doesn't go according to plan, and how I'm able to get back on my feet soon afterwards. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about my background, my tips on getting through frustration and setbacks, and my general thoughts. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, hit that notification bell if you like this content. And here we go. I was recently reminded that not all things goes according to plan. Sometimes setbacks will happen and you have to deal with it. And this can happen regardless of the time you spent planning on it. Because even the best laid plans can go haywire because you didn't account for some unknown variable. My wife and I were recently vacationing in LA and we parked our car in West Hollywood. And we left it there for a very long time and we came back and found it broken into. And whoever broke into it stole the contents of my backpack and whatever was in it. Although the contents of the bag wasn't that much, the hassle and paperwork that came afterwards was a headache for me. It was a huge hassle and inconvenience to try to solve that break-in during my vacation, and everything that happened afterwards, I was in a bad mood. And it definitely ruined the remainder of the trip, despite how I wanted to forget that actually happened. And even though I tried to move on and continue my vacation, I ended up obsessing over it constantly throughout the rest of my vacation. In the subsequent weeks and days after the event, I was finally able to rest, relax, and reflect on what had happened to me. And it really helped me to understand what I went through and how to grow as a person as a result of it. Because up until this event, I haven't had a recent setback that I can remember, and so this one really jostled me. And I gained a deeper understanding of how I'm supposed to act when I'm encountering that setback in the moment. At the end of the day, these tips and suggestions have really helped me to deal with frustrations in the moment and the near term afterwards. And through this experience, I've been able to be a more stronger person so that I'll be able to deal with more frustrations and frustrating moments in the future. So here are my tips on dealing with frustration in the moment. Number 1, remain calm and collected. Disclaimer, this is going to be hard to do in the moment, but when you're going through a setback or frustration, try to keep your emotions steady so that you're calm and collected. When you keep your head cool, you can see the situation more clearly and you don't get tunnel vision and focus on the extreme moment. And you have a much better chance of resolving the situation peacefully and calmly without blowing it up even more. Because in the moment, you can potentially make the problem worse for you or others around you. And in the heat of the moment, anger and sadness can overwhelm you and you won't be able to think clearly from then on. And it's just harder to come back down to being calm and collected once your emotions get the best of you. So for my break-in, I was very calm and collected during that situation, but that wasn't because I wasn't ready to be angry. It was because I was tired and running on low energy at the moment, and I just didn't have enough energy to tap into my emotions. But that ultimately helped me because I was very level-headed and very emotionally stable. And I was able to think more clearly than if I had a lot of energy and caffeine in me during that time. I would suggest for others when they're encountering a setback or frustration to try to focus on just the facts. Try your best not to engage in emotions during that situation or frustrating moment. There'll be plenty of time to do that afterwards. Focus on the facts in the moment and you'll be able to more clearly resolve that situation without making it any worse. So when you're experiencing a frustrating or setback moment, try to stay as calm and cool and collected as you possibly can. Number 2, maintain perspective. Another thing that you can do when you're going through a frustrating or setback moment is to try to maintain perspective about that situation. Don't make it any bigger or smaller than it actually is. And try to remain as objective as possible about what happened. Because you always want to keep the bigger picture in mind and not go into kind of a tunnel vision about that situation. This is because humans love to go tunnel vision and focus and blow up on something that's very small and insignificant. I myself have been guilty of that on many occasions where I take something very small and blow it into something bigger than what I expect it to be. And this is bad because I feed it with a lot of negative emotions and I become frazzled and angry over it. By keeping our true perspective of the situation, we can lessen the negative emotions that we feel from it. Emotions that might bubble up from an exaggeration of that situation. From my incident, I had to remind myself that this was a rental car. I had insurance on it and it was going to be okay. The backpack was stolen, but nothing important or valuable was inside of it. Me and my wife were safe and there weren't any long-term consequences from this burglary. My suggestion is to try to take a step back from whatever setback and situation you're in and look at the bigger picture. Is it something that's objective and you can look at it from a broader perspective? And try not to exaggerate any of the details of that situation. Just keep it to the facts as much as you can. Although it may hurt in the moment, pain always subsides eventually over time. And life will eventually go back to normal and you will accept what happened to you eventually. So when you're in a frustrating or setback moment, try to keep and maintain your perspective about what's happening. This will be one of the keys to being able to bounce back from a frustrating moment faster. Number 3, remind yourself of what you have. So the other part of maintaining perspective is to note and cherish all the good things that you have in your life. And fully understand that that setback that happened to you is just a blip in your overall life. You'll eventually forget about it. As we all know, when negative things happen, it tends to dominate our mind and we think about it obsessively. And sometimes that negative emotion can wash over all the positive things that we have in our life because we're so focused on that thing. And at that point, we tend to take all the good things in our life for granted, and we don't realize that we have such an awesome support network in our life. So after the setback, try to remind yourself of what you have and that all things can be eventually fixed. And that most of the bad things in our life will be eventually forgotten and we'll just move on with our life. Over the past couple of weeks after the incident, I really had to think about all the good things in my life that I still have and that wasn't affected because of this burglary, and how the people around me really supported me during this setback and frustrating moment. My suggestion is to make a list of all the things that you're grateful for in your life and refer to that list whenever something bad happens to you. Because this list can blunt the negative effects that you might be feeling after a setback or frustrating moment. And it'll help you to recover faster because you know you have these good things in your life to fall back on. The negative situation in effect is being overridden by all the positive things on that list. So when you're going through a tough situation, remind yourself of all the good things that you have in life and that you can draw support on when you need them. Number 4, acceptance of what happened. After some period of time after your setback, seek to accept what happened and move on from that acceptance. Because at the end of the day, you have to accept the things that aren't in your control about whatever situation that the setback occurred in. When we look back and analyze what happened, we find things that we could have controlled and things that we couldn't have controlled. Whatever you did and didn't do in that moment, you have to accept what happened and move on from it. Because even if we didn't do that one thing that would have prevented the incident, we can't go back in time and change it. And this acceptance can be a very long process depending on how many regrets that you have about that incident. But it's very important for you to go through each one of those decision gates and try to accept and acknowledge that choice. And try your best not to blame, deflect, or scapegoat any bad things that might have happened to you. Acknowledging and accepting what happened is the easiest way to recover from that particular setback. So for me, I'm still going through the acceptance process and it'll probably take a couple more weeks before I'm fully over it. Although this step might be challenging, acceptance of your frustration and setback will be the key to your recovery. And once you're able to recover, the next time you go through a frustration or setback, your resilience to it will be much higher. And number 5, build on the setback. When you go through any setback or frustrating moment, you're always going to learn something from it in the end. And that lesson learned will always help you for the future and guide your decisions the next time you encounter that specific problem. This allows you to become a stronger and more resilient person because you went through that frustrating moment or setback. Resiliency is built and maintained on the struggles and challenges that we go through within our lives, and we're better for it. Generally, the more adversity we endure and come back from it, the stronger and more resilient we are in the future. And we're able to bounce back in the future with less and less emotional and mental damage to ourselves. The experience of a car break-in was a much needed moment for me over the last few years. Because for me, I've gotten comfortable and complacent and I didn't really build up that resiliency from frustration or setbacks. I had gotten really good at planning and preparation, so I didn't really encounter a setback for some length of time. But unfortunately, nobody can plan 100% and account for everything that might happen to you. And this experience has shown me that I lost a little bit of resiliency that I built up 5 years before. I had to really take time and reflect on what happened, and I'll eventually get back to normal. Because I had forgotten what setback and being out of control felt like. So generally, I would take time and reflect on my setback and see if there was any lessons learned that I can gain from it in the future. Maybe the lesson for me is that next time I have a car break-in, I'll be more emotional and stable during that trying period. And hopefully it won't totally ruin my vacation if it happens to me again in the future. So build resiliency through your negative experience and you'll be stronger and more confident in the future. So here are my general thoughts on going through a frustrating moment. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's really good to have a solid foundation of resiliency when you're going through a setback or a frustrating moment in life. And that resiliency can be leaned on when times are tough and things don't go according to plan. But there is a catch. In order to get that foundation of resiliency, you have to go through some arduous and trying times in your life. Only through experiences and challenges do you strengthen that resiliency muscle. If you are sheltered or prevented from making your own mistakes in life, then it's going to be harder for you to build that resiliency. And if you don't have a lot of resiliency in the first place, it can be really hard to build upon it. You might be defeated in the process. So to combat this, I wouldn't necessarily put yourself in a situation where you have to rely on resiliency and test yourself. Any difficult situations that you can eventually overcome will help you slowly build your resiliency muscle. The key is to learn from situations that set you off, makes you sad, angry, or both. And try to aim for being just a little bit calm and collected the next time something like that happens to you. This way, for example, you'll be able to get 1% better at being calm, cool, and collected during a frustrating moment. And over time, that 1% builds and stacks upon itself, so you'll be able to gain a lot of resiliency afterwards. And that resiliency built up over a long period of time can help you in the future. So those are my tips on dealing with frustration and setbacks in the moment in life. Although in life we cannot escape going through frustration and setbacks, we can better prepare ourselves for the next time it happens to us. And learn key lessons from our past that can help us with current and future experiences. Each time we go through a harrowing experience, we learn something more about ourselves and how we would handle the situation, and how to eventually deal with setbacks the next time it occurs. For me, I've learned that I've gotten a little comfortable and complacent with negative feelings after a setback. I let that experience ruin an otherwise great vacation that I had up until that moment, and it affected me much more mentally than if I had let that go. So through this experience, I reminded myself of what I need to do when I'm going through a frustrating moment in life. So the main keys are to keep calm, maintain your perspective, and accept what happened. So I hope this helps you with your own journey in dealing with frustration and setbacks in life. So thank you for watching. Please leave me a comment down below on what do you do after you encounter a setback and what did you learn from that experience. And I'll see you next time.